A lot's happened in the past week.
Mm-hmm.
A lot's happened.
Yeah.
We lost the Euros.
It's funny you say we. I wasn't there, so someone lost.
True.
But,
I wasn't there, and I wasn't playing.
But
So
yeah, no, we lost, and it's funny that we say we, as in.
What does we mean?
I mean, no, I mean, we as in we identify as supporting England. I mean, as soon as we lose, a lot of things happened. As soon as we lost, a lot of things happened.
It's kind of funny because this is the furthest England has ever gotten in the Euros.
Ever in the Euros, but I mean, it's the furthest we've gotten in a minute, just in general, anyway. Right?
No, but this was the first time England ever got to the finals of the Euros.
Like period point blank.
Period point blank. It's the best England has ever done.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the loss. So, obviously, we got to the final, so we did pretty well up until then.
Yeah.
But we got to the end of time and got to penalties, and
if you haven't watched it, spoiler alert.
Yeah, probably relevant. Got to penalties, and then there were three gentlemen who unfortunately weren't able to score.
Yeah, nailed down that penalties.
And it was Rashford, Saka,
and Sancho.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. I mean, literally, they gave their all for the entire tournament, and then as soon as they made this, honestly, pretty big. It's even to say mistake. As soon as they didn't translate that moment to success, they were seen as failures. Because the same mistake means that it was all within their control. At the end of the day, it's them and a goal and goalkeeper.
True. So that goalkeeper was amazing.
Yeah, it's not like it was like it was an empty goal and like there was no one there. I mean, there was a good goalkeeper there. Yeah. Goalkeeper there, sorry. And yeah, as soon as that happened, I mean, what did you hear happened? As soon as like we lost, what did you hear? Like in the streets, online?
In the streets.
Yeah.
To be fair, I didn't hear anything straight away until the day after. And it was just mainly seeing online, just, kind of the typical, I would say English hooligan, kind of blaming the Negroes for losing England the Euros. And I find it is funny because it's when, as a black individual, when you do well, we're part of the club.
Yeah. And
the second we do something that we don't deliver on something, then suddenly it's like, no, we're
bananas,
separate.
monkey, everything. Right? Yeah.
Everything. I did say this before, and I think, not that people aren't racist, but I do think they always, especially when people are so passionate about football, they always go to whatever they feel the harshest insult is.
Absolutely.
So it's like, so if it was women, they'd say a bunch of sexist things.
Yeah.
Because the only thing I can remember, and the reason I'm saying this is because obviously this doesn't excuse it, but when years ago in the World Cup, when David Beckham missed a penalty, and it wasn't even on target, like it didn't even hit the post, it just went sky high. He was slated, absolutely slaughtered in the streets, even by people who supported him who weren't English.
Yeah.
Like he was an idol. Like there was like this whole statue. Was it in India? Can't remember. Somewhere in Asia, there was this whole statue, and they pulled it down because he missed that penalty.
It was crazy. It was to the point where even if you didn't follow football, you for some reason hated David Beckham at that point in time.
100%.
It was crazy, and it wasn't even social media wasn't even big back then. They just got around.
That's the thing, isn't it? And they would have slated calling his wife all kinds of names, whatever it is they could to hurt him.
That's the thing,
right? But that doesn't excuse racism. So the big question is, because obviously the entire country's eyes were on the football, and of course with all this kind of racism coming from it, what do we do now? Like, how do we move forward to kind of progress this? What do you think?
It's a great question, and one I don't think has just a simple answer. First of all, what are we looking at? Are we looking at just straight up racism? Are we looking at something that we need to change in football culture? Do we need to change English culture? Do we need to change sports culture in general? I think we need to kind of pinpoint what the poison is before we can try and find an antidote. So
do we see the same thing in other industries? Like, I don't know.
I mean, I feel like if this had happened in Eurovision, you know, there's almost a religious relationship between England and football. So if it hadn't been, I mean, honestly, I think this country would get over it if it wasn't this particular thing. If it wasn't football, I don't think it would have been as big a deal.
True.
There would have been jokes, there would have been memes, but I don't think it would have been as vitriolic.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, we may see it, but not to this degree. I don't think.
I agree.
But yeah, I mean, what can we do going forward?
It's interesting because, you know, I've seen a couple of stories already where, you know, some tweets or some posts, they found who the person is, what their employer is. I think someone got fired. Yeah. I think there was a comedian that said something. They cancelled his tour.
Yeah, he was dropped by his management agency as well.
As well. So the good thing is that if these people are found out, there seems to be big repercussions and consequences for them already, which is good.
Accountability for sure.
But so if that's already happening, what else can we do?
Well, I think we need to. I mean, I've mentioned this word a few times now. I think it's a culture thing. It's a mindset thing. I think the fact that we go straight to, I say we again, and I said we at the start of this video, because at the end of the day, we're here. We were born here, so it does hurt a tiny bit when you see this happening to people who you would hope would be your countrymen, but I guess aren't.
Especially someone like Marcus Rashford, who has done so much.
Oh yeah, so I guess forget about all the things.
He's like a national hero.
So
for like the past 12 months.
I mean, imagine you wake up one morning and this guy Marcus Rashford is trying to make sure that your kids get fed at school for free, and then but he missed.
But he missed the penalty.
So screw him, throw a banana at him. Like he's like all this stuff. I mean, it's mad. So I think it's wild. Do we change the culture? What do you think? What do you think should happen next? What do you think we can do to move on?
I think we have to just focus on the next generation. I think that, you know, realistically, you know, continue to celebrate and even more push to celebrate, you know, a diverse number of role models. Because the people, and I'm making an assumption here and a generalization, the people who spew this kind of racist stuff, it's a certain demographic.
Sure, I agree.
And this demographic are generally over the age of 35. So, and it's not saying they can't change, but I'm just kind of more accepting you're stuck in your ways, but you know what? If moving forward we can prevent your children from having the same views as you do, then that's how I think we progress. What do you think?
I definitely think the future may be the answer.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
No, I agree. But you really raised a good point with David Beckham, because like you, I agree. I think the race issue is big here, but I don't think it's primarily a race issue. I think it's primarily a football culture issue. This in particular, I think England has a really bad racism problem and a really bad discrimination problem. But if we're talking about this particular moment in time, I think that is something that we need to look at. How can we look at football culture in general? Because I mean, I don't know if the reaction would have been as different if the players that went out were Irish, or of Germanic descent, or Italian descent, or French descent, like playing for the England team.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it hurts more.
It's funny because Harry Kane is Irish. I don't know if people know that.
Yeah, when I do. Yeah.
No, you do.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a culture thing. Definitely football culture. Well, I say football culture. I definitely think it's a culture thing, and then we can pinpoint if it's football or English or British or male, female, whatever gender you associate with that. I don't know, but I mean, I think we need to look at the mindset first of the activity. Because you actually asked, is this present in other industries? I don't really see it as much like this. You know, I mean, hip hop has their things. When there's beef, people get cancelled immediately. I remember when Drake and Meek Mill had beef. Like Meek Mill got, whenever somebody loses, they're done, cancelled.
Yeah.
But in terms of like just a straight vitriolic stance on a race because of something, I haven't really seen that in any other industry.
Yeah. Do you think it's fair to say that the more passionate we are about something, the more tribal we become?
Absolutely. I mean, that is literally human nature. But I mean, but how does that tribalness or tribe mentality manifest itself? Does it manifest itself in hate? Does it manifest itself in trying to then do better? I mean,
because it's fun because I don't know if you how much of you watch the games, but so Jack Grealish, right, very good player. Every time he came on, everyone got very excited.
Yeah,
and it's not saying he's not a good player, but he's not the best player on. He wasn't the best player on the team. Actually, if we're going by goals and facilitators, Sterling was the best player on the team. Argument between Sterling and Harry Kane. But Grealish is the poster boy right now for, I think, English footballers.
Okay.
Specifically, maybe white English footballers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely does. Yeah.
You know, he's a good-looking guy. You know, the women love him. The guys feel that he represents, I should say the Caucasian guys, feel that he represents that typical traditional football English culture.
Sure.
So yeah, it's I do find it interesting how the more passionate we are about something, the more tribal we become. And that is human nature. So is this something, if we're saying that's human nature, is this something that, because when we had a conversation earlier in the week, I said I don't really care so much if racist people exist, so long as it doesn't affect my life.
Okay.
And I think what it is, I think if we can get to a point that, everyone's entitled to their own thoughts and their opinions. And if you have racist thoughts and opinions, that's fine. I say that's fine, as in, if we can get to a point that the repercussions for saying it out loud is so bad, then that's going to stop bleeding into the future generations. What do you think?
I definitely think that's possible. I mean, if we just look at even us as adolescents or like at 12 or 13, the things that we would say back then, no one would say that now. I mean,
true.
Things, just insults that kids would say to each other, they aren't acceptable now, and for good reason. And I think a big part of why that kind of died out is social shame, not just repercussions from like law enforcement or from government, but just literally your friends saying that's not funny. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think that, especially for people growing up, has more of an impact than a teacher telling you, "Oh, don't say that." I think when your circle, when the people that you identify with, the people that you look up to and want to like you, say, "I don't like what you just did," that has a bigger impact. That has a lasting impact.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, so I think, and it actually comes back to what you were saying before in terms of like changing how we see our role models and like having a more diverse set of role models. If we can change from an early age, like you're saying as well, our mindset on the role models that we see and how we decide to interact with them, I think that can have a lasting effect going forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right about the social shame.
Yeah. And
it's interesting because when you say social shaming, it doesn't, just the phrase on its own doesn't sound good. Like, quote unquote, discrimination on its own doesn't sound good, but we know we have, quote unquote, positive discrimination and negative. And whether discrimination is positive or negative is purely down to which perspective you look at, But yeah, I think you're so right. If we get to a point, social shaming, where if somebody is shamed for having certain views or saying certain things, they're probably more likely to adapt to the way, as opposed to, like you said, kind of capital punishment.
Yeah.